Well, hey everyone, Susan here. I hope you're having an incredible day. And I have a question for you, entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs, people thinking about entrepreneurship. What is keeping you up at night? And hopefully you are sleeping, but if there is something keeping you up at night, I hope one of the things is protecting your business and protecting your data. And it's something we think about a lot here on the show with the hundreds of founders that I've interviewed, and also in my past work as the CEO of an AI company, and just knowing that things like cybersecurity insurance and protocols are prevalent. And my guest today is the co-founder of a company called Field Effect. And he has grown this company significantly in his A round. They just got $41 million Canadian from a very well-known VC in the United States. And prior to that, he had Lynchpin Labs, which had a successful massive exit in 2018. And in this episode, we are going to talk about cybersecurity, protecting your business, and on the personal side, being an introvert and what that means in terms of what you do and how you show up to grow a company. Field Effect is a force to be reckoned with. It is a rapidly growing global company. And one of the things I'm excited about for you to hear this interview is that this particular co-founder is also Canadian, like I am. So anyway, it's going to be a great episode. We have a lot of fun, and I'm excited for you to hear from the amazing Matt Holland. And before we get into the show, I just want to thank you so much for being here and being a loyal listener. And if you're a new listener, I would encourage you to go to susansly.com and get on my insider list, because just for the insiders, I do a monthly free coaching where you get business coaching, startup coaching. You can ask me questions about artificial intelligence and technology. And it's not just the wisdom of interviewing hundreds of founders, it's also my wisdom as someone who has been the CEO of an AI company, is the founder of an upcoming company, and on top of it, is someone who is an MIT grad and still studying at MIT. I can't stop studying. Oh my gosh. But anyway, make sure you go to susansly.com, get on the list. And with that, let's take you to this amazing episode with Mr. Matt Holland. This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly. Well, Matt, welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. I am so excited to be here with you, a fellow Canadian. And then prior to getting to the show, we found out that you are originally from Prince Edward Island, and my mom's family was from the South Shore, or as you know, in Nova Scotia, we'd say the South Shore of Nova Scotia. That is the first time my global listening audience has ever heard me do a Nova Scotia accent. So it might be the first and last time, but Matt, I'm so happy to have you here. And I want to jump in with the first question. Occasionally we have founders on the show who are Canadian. And one of the big questions that has come up, I mean, you had a very significant $41 million Canadian A round. We see 2023 has been one of the toughest VC climates in 20 years. Raising money for a lot of startups, they're folding, they've had a difficult time. Do you feel for you, in given this current climate, but also being Canadian, that it was a detriment to you to raise money, or do you feel that you had some collateral from previous relationships that helped you?
That's a fantastic question. I think that comes down a little bit to the industry that I'm in. My company Field Effect is in the cybersecurity industry, and there aren't too many Canadian cybersecurity companies. So when people think about cybersecurity, they typically think of big powerhouse out of the US or potentially Israel. So being a Canadian entity was a little bit of a curveball that I don't know if we were a curiosity for people or that worked against us. It's tough to say, but I think one thing that did work for us is, and I'm not sure if this is a Canadian thing or a company culture thing, is our focus on value.
Mm.
and over delivering on the commitments that we make. When we were going into the process of raising, and even to this day, our churn is phenomenally low. And that is a good indicator of product market fit. That is a good indicator of us actually delivering on what we say and exceeding expectations, and really connecting with customers and partners as to what is important to them. So I
Mm.
think, I don't know if that's our Canadian background, or if that's just our company philosophy, but I think that was ultimately the difference maker when we went into the raising process.
That's it. I love what you said about adding value. And I think there comes a point for whether it's a Canadian company or someone who's, a Canadian surgeon, there comes a point where there's a temptation to migrate across that border. And we've had different founders on here from Canada. We just had John St. Pierre. He left. He's a Montreal guy. He left. We've had Rob Stewart. They've got Block Pal out of Vancouver. And especially when you start taking in US money, was that ever a temptation for you to leave Canada?
No, we're already pretty distributed throughout several countries. So we have a presence in the US, we have a presence in the UK and in Australia and New Zealand, and we tend to recruit from intelligence agencies, and that's a pre-built community. So the structure of the company didn't really need to change. We do have a big focus on growing into the US, and that is that's a separate motion from picking up and moving the company as well. And so it didn't really cross our mind. I think there's a long term. We'll be here. This will be our head office, but the distribution of company size will probably lean heavier into the U.S. because it just makes sense to grow in that direction.
So, what would you say? I was recently speaking at the Big Data and AI conference in Toronto, and we had a lot of discussions about Canadian government legislation when it comes to technology and data versus other countries which tend to be a lot more open, Matt, with it. Because there's this founder myth that I have a tech startup, I need to be in Silicon Valley, and you're proving that with your valuation, with the funds you've raised, with your global presence, what you've accomplished, that isn't the case. So what, for you, in your opinion, is the benefit of actually not being based in Silicon Valley?
Ooh, excellent question. I think off the top of my head, the biggest thing would be avoiding the noise. I think, if we were based in
Mm.
Silicon Valley, there'd be a lot of influences around how we should conduct ourselves, what matters. I've heard, interesting stories about how the grassroots of AI companies are getting started and how it's a very tight knit group in Silicon Valley. I think us being separate from any type of hype cycle allowed us to focus on bringing value and what we're really trying to do as a company. So I think being an observer on everything that goes on down there is a better place to be than necessarily a participant.
Well, and they don't have Tim Hortons there. So anyway, I
You should get
told
royalty for that.
Yeah, I told Matt before we got on the show, I said, listen, it's just like having a conversation with a friend. But when you're Canadian, we're going to bring all of the Canadian little nuances we can. We'll probably talk about the Tragically Hip. We can even talk about hockey. We could talk about all of those Canadiana things. We did speak about poutine in a recent episode. So, and then I had a founder from Vancouver. She wants to invent a martini with Timbits. I'm
Oh,
not sure how that will work, because if you put the Timbits on the toothpick and you submerge them, they're going to get sake. I don't know. That's for another conversation for another day. I We're going to talk about cybersecurity, and it is terrifying when we think about what all of the threats are. But for the average person and maybe the average entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneur listening, they don't have an idea. So I want to roll back in time to you, who refers to yourself as an ex-cyber spy. How did you get into this world of cybersecurity?
um,
Especially being from Prince Edward Island. Like, how did that happen?
yeah, honestly, just through luck and circumstance, really. I was originally determined to become an astronaut. I actually took Russian in university, and because back then, back in 1995, the U.S. and Russia were a space collaboration. not so much as now. I done a work term at the Communication Security Establishment, which is a Canadian version of the NSA. I go there for the summer, and I get introduced to this world of cybersecurity, and I immediately fell in love with it. Canceled my PhD plans and said, "All right, this is where I'm going to go from here." And then just started a full-time job. And I think the fact that 9/11 happened 1 year after I joined, I got to be a part of a group that just went from being a grassroots effort to a national priority. So, when it comes to accelerating one's career, I mean, I went from, a newbie right into having to perform at the top of my game that I could possibly achieve in a matter of months. So not only was it a skills increase process, but like a maturity increase. And that really drove home the concept of mission and determination. And, that kind of started the foundation of how to be an entrepreneur for me.
Was it hard to walk away from your PhD?
No, there's a funny story there, probably for another day, but no.
I want to hear it. This is raw, real entrepreneurship. I have, there are people listening right now who are quote unquote technologists. So they're data scientists, they are data engineers, there are all of these collaboration groups of friends that I collect all over the world. And they stop me at conferences and they'll say, I listen to the show. I want to start a business. I want to know the story.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, joining an intelligence agency, it sounds very glamorous right out of the gates, but you can imagine leaving university. It's a big change in direction. A big part of it was how much I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the team, and they had been trying to recruit me over the course of the summer. And then one of my coworkers dug out a box of old Transformers from his garage and said, "If you join, you can have this box of Transformers." And I was oddly touched by the gesture, and I said, "Okay, I'll join." And it's kind of a ridiculous story upon hearing it, but it was a fun time.
You mean Transformers like the toy Transformers or like conduits? Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, the Transformers that were like the toys that I grew up with. So
yeah,
I got bribed by a child's toy at like age 23.
Transformers more than meets the eye, right? Was that the slogan, Matt?
Yeah.
I'm 51, so I'm down with it. Okay, so you were bribed with Transformers. Yeah. I love it. Okay, and you know what? We have a saying, and chacun son goût, right? Yeah. Who knows, right? What could be that temptation? So diving into cybersecurity, and I have many friends who come from the intelligence background. My first job, you won't know this, but my first job out of university, when I graduated from St. Mary's University, I had been writing code. We were doing early facial recognition algorithms back in 92, 93. I decided I want to catch the bad guys. So where do you see bad guys up close? Go work in Kingston Pen for men. And so my first job was federal corrections, coming out of school. And that whole world of catching physical bad guys was what I was fascinated about and passionate about. Now we see with edge and AI and computer vision use cases there, and there's a lot of data ethics around that. But you are fighting people that cannot be seen. What does the average person not realize about cybersecurity?
I would say how easy it is to be a target. It doesn't take that many mistakes of how you conduct yourself online or how much information you reveal on the internet to all of a sudden get on the radar of an attacker. For the longest time, enterprises or governments were the main targets, and we've seen over the years attackers kind of go downstream to smaller businesses and smaller businesses. But that applies to individuals as well. I've heard of lots of people being directly attacked, and I'm the person who gets the phone call to clean things up. But it can happen to anybody, and that might sound like I don't know, fear mongering, but it is reality. It is so easy to accidentally do something on the internet or provide your address or reuse passwords that eventually get leaked, and then all of a sudden you've been compromised.
So many questions I have right now. Okay, rapid fire. You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
How often should someone change their password, and what is the length of a password?
I think it's less important to change your password and more important to use a password manager. There's some really good types of password managers out there that will generate really good passwords for you. And then you only need to remember one password to unlock the password manager, and then you can copy your password in. So it reduces the complexity down to one password, but also ensures that the quality of the passwords that you use in your online accounts are really quite good. So that by far is the best thing you can do.
Does clearing your cache do anything?
It doesn't hurt.
Okay.
The larger technology companies are making it more annoying to utilize cookies, which are like browser artifacts that advertisers can use to identify what you're interested in, and the privacy models around that are getting better and better. But it doesn't hurt to clear your browser cache every once in a while.
Okay. What about public Wi-Fi? The dangers.
Don't do it unless you're using a VPN.
Okay. And for a person who doesn't understand a VPN, because we have people who, which I love, if you're driving your kids in the car and listening to the show right now, because we are very proud that we have a PG rating on our show. As a mom, I love that. And so would you mind explaining VPN to those people who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. And what it means practically is software that you can put on your computer or your mobile device that ensures that when you browse the internet, it is encrypted and third parties cannot observe the traffic. So when you go to an internet, I was going to say internet cafe. I don't even know if those
No
exist.
one does that anymore. I know, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
When you go to a coffee shop and you connect to the Wi-Fi there, if you turn on your VPN, that ensures that nobody else on the Wi-Fi can actually see your network traffic, and as such, it's privacy. It's one of the best things you can do when you're on untrusted Wi-Fi's.
The VPN is so fun. I change my location multiple times a day. It's so fun because I'm like, oh, I'd like to be here, but I'm not really there. So it is a great thing to do. What about incognito browsing? Is it effective, or is it just something that's a nice toy to have?
It makes things better. It typically it doesn't cache as much information or data about you or what you're doing. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. It's essentially clearing your history and caches once a day, except you don't need to do it.
Okay, I love that. Okay, my next question is, your kids, we're both parents, and what advice do you give to other parents out there to protect their kids from vulnerabilities?
That's a great question. Glad I don't know if it's too late, but first I'd recommend don't let them play video games. That would be the first step as a parent. Obviously, that's hard. So I can talk about what we do. We use family sharing and management. So when my kids use their iPads, I can see what they're doing. I can limit their screen time. I can control what they have access to. So age limits and whatnot. And I think as a parent, if you take the time to set that up, it's a little bit irritating. But once you set it up, there are guards in place that alleviate the ongoing need to necessarily keep an eye on what your kids are doing. Always good to look at what they've been looking at. I don't know what the particular comfort level is on how much you're observing your kids and whatnot, but the setting up the family structure ahead of time is something I definitely recommend.
Okay, those are all great recommendations. And thank you, Matt, for that, because I know the listeners, cybersecurity, I was reading recently the cost of remediation for a small business can be $2 million. Ransomware holding the data. Most small companies don't have a CISO. They don't use, say, NIST protocols or whatever protocols that are in place. And then they have to clean things up And it's one thing for a large company to clean up a data breach. Lots of companies have had them MGM, Target, so on and so forth. But for a small business, especially in today's economy, it can be very, very costly. And so what recommendations would you have for small business owners in order to protect themselves?
So you're diving into basically why I co-founded Field Effect. The approach that our company takes is one of cost-effective cybersecurity as a curated service. You hit the nail right on the head in that most small businesses can't afford a CISO. They're lucky to have an IT team. So when something happens, where do you even start? Who do you call to make that better? And ultimately, the cost of being proactive and taking proactive protection is significantly lower than dealing with a ransomware event. So I'll try not to throw too many acronyms out there, but as a small business, what you should buy, don't go out and buy an antivirus or download what your top Google hit. Find a really good managed detect and response provider, MDR. And what you get with that is the full suite of technology and people. So when something goes wrong, you've got a team on your side. And ideally something, it doesn't actually go wrong because the company is there 24/7. That's what Field Effect does. So that $2 million ransomware event, we prevent that for basically a cup of coffee per employee per week. So if you can afford an office coffee fund, then you can afford really good cybersecurity and to make the problem go away entirely.
And that's why I love what you do, because I know for you, Matt, it's a heart piece, right? We reject 90% of applicants for the show because the show is my heart's opus, is to share founders like yourself with people all over the world. And when I was researching for the show, that's why I asked you that question, because it is so needed as a managed service. And we think about different things that small business owners have and new entrepreneurs have. So they might, they get insurance and so on and so forth. Speaking of insurance, this is a new trend. So in the, say, B2B space, one of the things that, it's been my experience as a co-founder of an AI company that these large enterprises will ask for, it's an increasing level of multi-million-dollar cybersecurity insurance policies. And those policies are really, really expensive. And so I would love to get your opinion on that, especially for small business owners, because there, a lot of insurance companies out there are selling policies, and what do people need and what do they not need?
Great question. I'm generally a proponent of cyber insurance simply because a lot of company types, if you're part of a professional organization, or if you have to get certified for perhaps a security standard or an industry standard, you need to have cyber insurance along with that. So it's a good thing to get and have. The downside is it doesn't actually protect you from anything. It's just there to help compensate a bad day. So if there is a ransomware attacker that does happen to get around, defenses, and to your number earlier, it costs $2 million, you're not paying that out of pocket. The downside is typically that will they'll only pay that once. So it's kind of a one-shot scenario. I believe most insurance providers won't even give coverage unless you have that managed detect and response piece earlier as well. Insurance providers are starting to realize that the cost of an attack is disproportionate to the cost of the premium. So that is a necessary piece. If your business needs it and if it can afford it, I would recommend it. But I would expect along with that the expectation that as a business owner, you're taking the necessary defensive steps in order to get approved.
That is such sage wisdom, because most people aren't thinking that way, right? They're buying their policy, but they're not saying, "Oh, I need to have this, MDR as well on top of it. And there are companies that will not transact with you unless you have both of those things, and you have to be fully transparent. And if you are a new entrepreneur and you've got a startup and you're wearing multiple hats, so you're the CEO and the CMO and your CISO and you're everything else, right? There's a lot that goes into it. I want to talk about this starting this business. I've interviewed 330 founders on the show. And I know you have a passion for this. And I know that you're making a difference. So I love people's origin stories. And there's a lot of like, when you think about this, there's a mythical kind of like, oh, there were a bunch of us, we're sitting around a living room coffee table, we came up with this idea. Like, how did you first come up with the idea of Field Effect?
So it kind of ties into my first company. First company I founded was called Lynchpin Labs, and I founded it in 2007 with a buddy of mine out of Australia. Lynchpin Labs was and still is, I'm sure, an intelligence tradecraft company, meaning we built basically an intelligence toolkit in a box, and we marketed it to allied governments. So democratic governments as part of their lawfully mandated mission. Early on, we also wanted to get into the defensive side because, our opinion at the time and still largely today is that there is not a really, really good cybersecurity solution out there that caters towards small, medium businesses. That's why Field Effect was formed, was ultimately to address that problem. I sold Lynchpin in 2018. It was a bootstrapped company, by the way. Didn't get any funding for that. The transaction was substantial enough to allow me to break out Field Effect into its own company, and I funded that from the proceeds of my first company. And up until we raised our Series A, we were a fully bootstrapped company. And I think a neat thing about the history of that is it allowed us to build a product and services suite that is more rich and holistic. A fantastic fit for small to medium businesses, well beyond any other billion-dollar company out there. And that's something that, we're very proud of. We're very confident in our future because we see the outcomes of what we're delivering, how much we're connecting with businesses and making a difference. The number of times we've heard I could sleep at night now is tremendous. And that's really satisfying. Like, that's what we set out to build, and we're accomplishing that now. And the reason we raised a Series A round is because, at a point where the question was, how do we take this to the world? And, as big as my exit was with my first company, I just couldn't fund that. So our mission now is to take this formula to every country, to every small and medium business around the world. And going to keep doing it until we achieve that mission.
It's amazing when I think about you have this successful exit, you have this idea, you start to bootstrap it. There's a part of the story about creating this initial piece of technology, because when people hear technology startup stories, they do think data scientist, they think engineer. There are different ways to create. We don't say beta anymore. We say our MMP, our minimum marketable product, and to kind of get the kinks out. When you created that first MMP of Field Effect, were there any sort of rough patches around it initially, as you were getting out to market? Because I think so many people, one of the myths, Matt, people think, oh, the founder just puts out the perfect thing first and it's all great, and then they get $1 billion valuation, and that's the end of the story, right? This is raw and real entrepreneurship. Was there any polishing of rough edges required?
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's a journey. Any technology product is a journey, and I think the luxury of us being a bootstrapped company is that we could stay in stealth for as long as we needed. And we did that. I don't think we went to market for about 5 years. And then once we felt we had something that would bring, I guess, a good level of value to customers, we started drip selling it just to see how it went. And yeah, of course, we had rough patches, and we still churn out a ton of intellectual property on a daily basis. There's bugs, you fix them, and I think once you bring it to market, you get your product market fit. You then focus on how do you refine the QA process and your DevOps to make sure that the bugs and the kinks in the problem are in the product are worked out before they hit customers. And that's we're beyond that phase now. But I mean, there's still a lot of moving parts that go into the system, and it's a journey to go from idea to minimal marketable product, to finding a product market fit, and then scaling it. And then that scaling is iterative. You're just constantly doing it as you add new features to the product. So it's very much a journey. There is no, unless it's 2021 and VCs are throwing money at you at ridiculous scales, you have to look at it as a journey.
2020 year was the year of 365-day Christmas. I how did you get your first paid users?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because you were in the government sector, you were like, and now you're looking at it. It's a completely, you're still B2B, but it's a different B. It's like small B, right? Not big B. How did you get those first paid users?
Initially relationships, and trying to sell a crazy idea to friends and family that in companies, and asking for introductions to IT teams, and so really tapping that contact network. Once we got a feel for what was successful and what we could scale, we pivoted very much into a channel based go to market. So focusing on MSPs and VARs, and that's where we are today. But again, that was a 5-year journey.
I love that you said that, right? Boys and girls all over the world, you heard Matt say relationships. Like, we don't just, when we're starting a new company, just put a LinkedIn post and say, okay, paid users, come try this platform. Did you offer any incentives for those early users?
Yeah, we've always been priced very competitively.
But I mean, the early first users, like, did you offer a freemium? Did you like?
Yeah, I think, we did things like 3 months free. I'd say that's a core expectation, that you can't really expect somebody to give you money until you've earned it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a back and forth between how do you build brand to increase your sales, how do you invest marketing dollars, and it's that is something that is an ongoing discussion. And that's another thing I would highlight, that you will never get a perfect formula on any particular day. You need to be flexible and ready to pivot as needed. And but yeah, we definitely did incentives and freemiums, and we still employ strategies such as that today, as we're trying to break into new partners or new markets.
I don't know if you're willing to share, but for the listeners who've never done this, when you're pitching your A round, what the VCs want to know is what percentage of the funds are going into different buckets. So when you were pitching for your A round, are you willing to share what percentage you had allocated towards sales and marketing for new customer acquisition? Or ballpark it?
I don't know if I remember that. I can say that the big thing with our raising was the fact that we had a substantial technology platform, a phenomenal product market fit, which was substantiated by an incredibly low churn. So the thesis behind the raise was entirely around commercial expansion. So that was something that was really big for us. It would be really hard, I think, to sell a cybersecurity company with any other formula. If your technology isn't done, I'd say this for any technology company. If your technology isn't mature enough to where you can say, I figured out the product market fit, and I'm looking for ways to scale it commercially, it's a much harder raising environment right now.
Well, and you also had with Lynchpin Labs, you had a successful exit that goes into the attractiveness of the investment as well for the VC. And you and I, from that VC, we know some people over there, not necessarily people in common, but they're a very well-known VC and out of the United States, which is awesome. What is it that you have to do as a co-founder in your company that you don't like doing, but you do anyway?
You're talking to the one of the world's biggest introverts. Um, oh goodness, I don't really know if there's anything I don't like doing. I think there's things that I look at my job as doing whatever the company needs me to do.
Mhm.
I've always, looked at it that way. Like if when Lynchpin was smaller, I was the one cleaning the floors. If somebody needs me to, give them a kick in the butt, they get a kick in the butt. Need me to help with marketing, I'll do it. You need me to throw away a weekend and write code, I'll do it. Um, so I would say it's less about what I enjoy or don't enjoy, and more about uh, the acknowledgement. I'd recommend this to anybody thinking about getting into entrepreneurship. Is that once you decide to build a company, like you have to make it your existence, and it's largely um, balancing family and building a company is very hard, but
Mhm.
the company that you're building really needs to take a lot of your energy, and you don't always get to choose what you work on, whether you enjoy it or not. The successful output of the company is has to be your existence.
I love that you said that. And it is tough at times because there's always the exciting phase. It's like dating when you've got the ideation and then in the United States you get your EIN or you're incorporated or whatever. And it's like you've got your name and you've got your domain. It's like yes, and you shared your preliminary pitch deck that you made on Canva with like 5 people and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." That's exciting. And
Yeah,
then the reality hits. It's like, okay, we're actually in this. We're building our MMP. We have to figure our go to market, all of those things. And that willingness to do things that we don't necessarily want to do. There's a saying by Les Brown that goes like this, that if we do what is hard, life will be easy. But if we do what is easy, life will be hard. And that's the part of that founder's journey. And I'm excited about Field Effect. I think that just knowing you and knowing the company and all of the research I did prior to our show, like I'm definitely the link is going to be in the show notes. And I want everyone, if you have a small business or you're a startup, to be looking at bringing Field Effect on. This is the part where if you're Canadian, we play this game. If you're not a Canadian founder, Canada, you're number 3 right now in the world. Get back to number 2. It's not, I was telling Matt, it's not because the listeners aren't rising. It's because they're rising really fast in countries like India. But it doesn't mean just because we have a smaller population, we can't rise up. So we play um, what we love about Canada. Okay, you ready?
yep.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Timbit flavor?
Oh goodness. Yeah, the honey glazed. Big fan of the honey glazed.
Delicious, right? Yeah, absolutely. Favorite Canadian band of all time?
Probably Tragically Hip. Makes really good pool music.
It does. What's your favorite hip song?
I don't know.
I
You
used
guys right.
to, this is raw and real entrepreneurship. So boys and girls, close your ears, but I used to prep them for tours.
Oh, nice.
And so Bob Baker, Johnny Faye, Gord Downey, Gord Sinclair. Anyway, know them all incredibly well or did do. And when they came out with Phantom Power, I owned a health club in Kingston, Ontario back in those days in the 90s. And Gord Downey comes running in and he used to call me Matt Susan Power. Like, do you remember Susan
Yeah.
Powder back in the 90s? So I was Susan Power. And he comes running in and runs all around my gym going, Susan Power, Susan Power, Susan Power. And I still have the CD and he wrote to Susan Power on there, love Gord. And fun fact is my friend Matt, Gord Sinclair has started the Gord Sinclair Band. And my friend Matt, who is a listener of the show, is in that band and they are going on tour. So there's my unsolicited plug for the Gord Sinclair Band. And we had Tyler Murray from Ghost Retail out of Toronto on the show, and he is the founder there. And here's a fun fact for you, Matt. They used a very special filming technique, and they filmed the hip in concert. And it is, if they decide to release it, it will be like a 3D immersive experience where we're literally on stage with them, holograms. And I was just emailing with Tyler. He hasn't decided to release it. So there's another piece of Canadian trivia. Hockey team. Do you have one? If so, who?
I do. I live in Ottawa, but I'm a Leafs fan from PEI, and you had to choose Leafs or Montreal back then. And I went with the Leafs. I know it's terrible.
Do you remember Kirk Muller?
I don't know.
He played for the Leafs briefly. He was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. They won the cup when he was the captain, but I used to train him as well. Yep. So, yep. Okay, Leafs fans. All right. My last question is Canadian actor or actress, who is our best export in terms of acting, do you think?
Oh, God. I feel like I'm going to get lambasted for this. I had a love-hate for Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds will, and good on him. He owns a soccer team now, and I think he has a gin, and he's going to be a billionaire, and it's good for Ryan. I think he was a good export too. I think we've had a lot of good exports. Some exports I don't think we will admit that are Canadian, but that could be another day of trivia. Final question for you, Matt. You mentioned that you're an introvert, and I've had many founders like yourself who are normally quite introverted, and that isn't something usually people associate with being the face of a company. What advice would you give to just that one person listening, wherever they are in the world right now, and they're like, I'm introverted too, I don't know if I can do this? What advice would you give to them?
So the way I kind of prepare myself as I think about how passionate I am for the company and the mission, and what the potential is, the people that work here, the customers that we have, how much I enjoy it. And I think if a person taps into that, you find yourself very excited to talk about it, and being an introvert kind of just goes away.
That is great advice. Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate that. And everyone listening, we would love, number one, a 5-star review. If you're on iTunes, we have many, many, many 5-star reviews. We love that. We'd love for you to tag Matt and I, tag Field Effect. And the link to Field Effect is going to be in the show notes. And I will say this unsolicited. Matt did not ask me to say this. In my weird and wacky background, even studying cybersecurity at MIT, which I didn't even tell Matt that I had. That's why I throw out NIST protocol like it's nothing. Please take a look at Field Effect if you are an entrepreneur, because we didn't even go down the scary, scary road of the different levels of the internet, the dark web. We didn't even go there because that would have been more like a Halloween show. But please take a look at it and consider it, because the criminals are just getting smarter, and you have to be adaptable and have someone else taking care of that, so you can go out and do what you need to do to promote your company. So Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you. All right, everyone. Well, this has been another episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. And wherever you are, I just hope you have an amazing day. God bless. And I will see you in the next episode. Are you currently an employee looking to start your own business? Maybe you've been thinking about it for a while and you're just not sure where to start. Well, my course, Employee to Entrepreneur, combines my decades of experience as an entrepreneur with proven methods, techniques, and skills to help you take that leap and start your own business. This course is self-paced, learn on demand, and comes with an incredible workbook. And that will allow you to go through this content piece by piece by piece, absorb it, take action, and then go on to the next module. So check out my course on susansly.com, Employee to Entrepreneur.